or having this discussion, I guess I should say. So I'm not quite as nervous. I don't tend to get nervous anymore. But it's great to see everyone. There's a lot of familiar faces, and then there's a lot of unfamiliar faces. So I will explain who I am and we are. So I'm the tall guy there. My wife Jess, Michaela. Of course, it's backwards for you guys. So Michaela, Matt, and Maverick's in the middle. And I guess I'll go into a little more detail with that picture. I'm a bread man. My occupation took us to Wisconsin for about 2.5 years, and now we're back in Indiana. And while we were gone, we got some information and some other things had happened, and this church had given a pretty sizable contribution to Jess and I's son Maverick, and so while I was in Battle Creek on business one day, I'd called Russ, and on my way home to Fort Wayne, I thought I would swing in and just kind of formally thank and speak to, what had been going on and where we were at, and that turned into about hour and 15, hour and 30-minute conversation, and my thoughts of swinging in some Sunday morning and thanking everybody for 5 minutes turned into, hey, why don't you just sit up there on stage and explain what you just explained to me, but instead of an hour and 15 minutes, let's do it in 35 minutes. So I'll do my best. So Jess, sorry, I'm trying to make it not echoey, but I want to make sure that everybody can hear me in the back. So Jess is, she's the one that makes all this work for us. She's the strongest, and she's the glue that keeps the complexity of life functional, I guess, as well. So then we have the 3 kids. You have Michaela. She's the oldest. She's 8. She's a sweetheart. She's a good one. And then you have Matt, the middle one. He's 6. There you are. And he's a lot of fun. He's rowdy. Maverick there, he's 4. And he is really exactly like Matt. He just doesn't have the ability to be exactly like Matt. Otherwise, he'd be in just as much trouble. So those are the 3 kids. So now I'm here to talk about, why I'm sitting up here. And that's Maverick. So I guess I'll start at the beginning. I'll try to move as fast as I can. Being the youngest, Jess was able to figure out right away that he was just a little off at about 5, 6 months old. Of course, me, I said, no, he's fine. He's 5 or 6 months old. He'll be walking, and he'll be fine. And so she convinced a pediatrician in Goshen that there was some concern as well. So I was the odd man out, and we went down to Riley Children's Hospital to go see a developmental pediatrician. Developmental pediatrician, again, sided with Jess, and decided to run a bunch of tests. Mitochondrial, protein, hormones, scheduled an MRI, you name it. We did as much as our insurance company would allow. And so there was no issues with any of the proteins or hormones. And those are the ones we wanted, because you can fix those. The MRI came back with a slight to mild white brain matter loss at the time, which was non-concerning to Riley's, because it could be a simple, technician clicks here on the picture and here on the picture, and so the measurement's a little off. But the microarray, which was a basic genetic testing, had come up with a chromosome deletion in 2p16.3. So Riley's focus is on this chromosome deletion. But from the other kids they found across the United States with the same 2p16.3 chromosome deletion, none of the symptoms, they weren't the same. None of them had the issues Maverick did. But that's where they wanted to go. So in the middle of this, Aunt Millie's had asked if I would move to Wisconsin and help facilitate the expansion of our company there. So we talked about it and prayed about it, and we decided to put the house up for sale by owner. And I put it on Zillow at night, right before I went to bed. And in the morning, I had a text message, and it was sold. We had a lot of interested parties, and that thing sold in 24 hours. So we were convinced it was the right thing to do. So we headed off to Wisconsin. We lived right in the middle of Milwaukee and Madison, and transferring his care there was fantastic. Milwaukee had told us that they usually get the tougher cases that Riley's has, issues solving because they're relatively close, and they do pretty good up there. So we were in a good spot. Maverick started with rehabilitation first, and Dr. Savara immediately put him on a therapy program, working with Jess and everybody that worked for our family. Pretty intense. We did 2 physical therapies a week, and when I say we, remember, I'm not the glue that holds our family together. I'm not the tough one. Jess is. So when I say we, I mean Jess. Took Maverick to 2 physical therapies a week at a private practice, 2 occupational therapies a week at a private practice, a speech therapy once a week at a private practice, and then he additionally went to a daycare / Head Start early intervention thing with the state of Wisconsin, where he got 1 more occupational therapy, 1 more physical therapy, and 1 more speech therapy a week. So this kid is an incredibly hard worker. So he, at 3 years old, he works harder than a lot of the guys that worked for me in Wisconsin, to be honest with you. So we started there with rehabilitation in that program. But I mean, we quickly move into other departments. I think neurology gets involved, and he wants to do another MRI, and then he kicked us over to genetics. And genetics was great. Dr. Basil in genetics, this guy, he is the 9th, at this time, he's the 9th specialist, if you will, that Maverick's ever seen. And typically how this goes is you walk into the room and you tell your entire story, and then the specialist wants to think about it and then get back together in 6 months to talk about it again. But not Dr. Basil. Dr. Basil came in knowing everything there was to know about Maverick. He'd already read his file and already reached out with a couple other departments to start game planning something. So Dr. Basil comes in, and Jess and him are talking, and Dr. Basil had known, Jess had alluded to it as well, that Maverick was falling off the weight chart for kids. So he's at 3% weight. And and that's not a problem if you're following the trend, you know what I mean? But he wasn't. So the trend, his 3%, he's fallen off the trend. So there's an issue. So Dr. Basil wants to send us over to gastroenterology. I wrote it down. It's a tough one. I always don't want to say gastrology. I don't know why they throw all the extra syllables. Gastroenterology. See? So this stomach doctor will get involved as well. Now, at this point in that meeting with Dr. Basil, I had said, I've been on a couple teams, projects, if you will, where when you get involved, somebody usually grabs point so that everybody's moving in the same direction and rowing the boat at the same pace. So Dr. Basil said, yep, that's actually a great idea. We have a special needs program here, and so Maverick absolutely would qualify for this. So now Maverick's going to see a fifth team, a special needs team of doctors. Now this special needs team is great because these ladies, they keep all the departments talking and in sync, and they're really focused on a diagnosis because at this point, Maverick's receiving all of his care based on a chromosome deletion in 2p16.3. Cerebral palsy had been talked about. There's several misdiagnoses with cerebral palsy in that it doesn't fit the medical narrative or the MRI pictures very well, but a physician will give that diagnosis based on the fact that they're generally taking compassion on a family so that the insurance company will start kicking in. Because without a diagnosis, the insurance companies won't do anything. So that was discussed, but Milwaukee said, nope, that's not it. And so that special needs team kept pushing forward. And so they had found different programs throughout the nation that did entire genome sequencing for free, part of research studies. That's why it was for free, because our insurance company didn't want to do that because they said it was too expensive, and they wanted to make sure that we had checked all the avenues before we went to entire genome sequencing because it's too expensive. So the company out in San Diego, Rare Genomics, they accepted Maverick into their program. And so Jess, myself, Maverick, all got entire genome sequencing. And then we had a discussion when all those results came back in. Now, we were told ahead of time that we would probably not get anything. But, it's a research program, so they'll still take our medical records, and they'll still benefit from diving into Maverick's DNA and our DNA and all this stuff. So they said 30% of the time we'll get something on these entire genome sequencing, but usually it's nothing we can do anything with pertaining to the issues. It's just, hey, by the way, did you know that you metabolize aspirin really fast or something? So we at this point we're on board for about anything. We really don't know what's going on. So we get a call one day, Dr. Basil, and he says, hey, we got the results back. Why don't you come on in? And he says, now we don't bring Matt and Michaela really to any appointments. We schedule the appointments during the day where I have a very involved schedule, but it is flexible, so I can always be there. Jess is always there. And then it's usually during school with Matt and Michaela, so it's usually just me, Jess, and Maverick. So Dr. Basil calls up, he says, hey, we got the results in, and how about you not bring any kids? And he says, like just you and Jess. Okay, great. Didn't ask any questions outside of that. I don't know why, I didn't. So we schedule that, and we go on in. It's a Monday, remember that. And so we get in a room, and it's me and Jess at a round table, an empty chair, and Dr. Basil, his genetic counselor. And he says, we got your results back, and we wanted to go through you and Jess's. And they go through it, and Jess is good, no issues, good to go. And then myself, maybe some of you other guys here that know me a little better growing up with me would say otherwise, but turns out I'm good to go too. There's nothing wrong with me. So we get to Maverick. Dr. Basil says, now, let me say something here real quick. If I pause, I might be gathering my thoughts. I might be gathering my emotions as well. I'm not going to make this awkward or uncomfortable, but just give me a minute, because this is a tough subject. So he says, we got a diagnosis. So this is 3.5 years in. Those words alone were enough to be pretty emotional. And he says it's a leukodystrophy. Now, I am incredibly analytical, and you can't give me enough information. I'm an operations guy. Give me all the information I can stand, and I will fix a problem. And so he says, it's a leukodystrophy. I'd probably read about it. I don't know. I'd read a million things at this time. Things that would scare you and things that you thought, awesome, great, we're going to therapy this guy into running upstairs and hitting a baseball one day. So he says, it's a progressive and it's a degenerative brain condition. Degenerative meaning, it continues to get bad, and progressive meaning like it gets more bad faster. Sorry. Try not to sniff into the mic. So he says, I'm sorry. We'll give you a moment. And then him and his genetic counselor walked out of the room. So Jess and I could have a moment. I mean, what are you going to do with that moment, right? I mean, I want to flip out my phone and start reading everything I can about it. You hold each other because you know what progressive and degenerative mean. First thing that comes to your head is how progressive, how degenerate. So we have our moment, and Dr. Basil comes back in, and he says, we know that his specific leukodystrophy, based on this entire genome sequencing, is leukodystrophy HABC. That is the hypomyelination and with atrophy of the basal ganglia and cerebellum. Hypomyelination is just a fancy word for means something's going away, something's dying, it's leaving. Atrophy is the same thing. It's dying, it's going away. They're different words because they get to the same outcome differently. So he says HABC is the rarest of all the leukodystrophies. Depending on the medical article you read, there's anywhere from 30 to 70 different leukodystrophies, depending on which doctor gets to classify them, right? So Maverick has the rarest form, though. There's no debating that. And he tells us at this point, he is the 72nd person ever in the world to be diagnosed with this form of the leukodystrophy. So he is 1 in 72 of 7,530,103,737 people. And because it's so rare, it's hard to tell what the road ahead looks like outside of the obvious. So we leave, and we have a stack of papers that he's printed off that we can read about. And then I do my own reading. And Dr. Basil did say, he said, what we got to look out for is the swallowing. That's going to be impacted first. If we can keep that airway open, we'll do all right for a while. But eventually, he'll breathe saliva into his lungs. there's nothing we can do about infection, pneumonias. He said because of the hypomyelination of the white brain matter, leukodystrophy patients usually have the inability to fight off infections, fevers, like other people with good white brain matter do. So the medical narrative has him living to probably about 8 to 10 years, maybe a little bit longer. He's 4 right now. So we put him to bed one time. Good. Get up in the morning, and you're like, whoa. He's warm. Take his temperature. He's at 104.6, 104.8. Just had a cold. They respond to Tylenol. So if you catch it, they come right down. Fever might get him if we don't catch it in time. He might burn up in the middle of the night. Pneumonias are gonna come into play here soon. It really depends on how fast that degenerative progressive scale goes when it really kicks in. He used to call me dad. He can't say dad anymore. He used to crawl. He completely has lost the ability to crawl last Christmas. We noticed that. So he's losing a couple of things, but he's pretty good otherwise. He's a fun kid. So we asked, now what do we do? So now what do we do? Oh wait, go to the MRI slide. So that second, go to the next one. There we go. So the second MRI comes in, just so you guys can have an idea. This is 1-year-old one, and the circle part is the cerebellum, the lower brain, and you're looking basically, the camera's like up like this. So here's the back of his head. There. That's his nose, and you're looking up. So you can clearly see his cerebellum. And on the left is this 1-year-old MRI in Indiana, Riley's, the original one. And this is 2.5-year-old one that Dr. Harmelick had ordered in Milwaukee. And so you can see that there's a lot of fluid surrounding his cerebellum than what used to be in a 1.5 years' time. So that's the cerebellum. That's that C part of that HABC. So when tissue goes away, your body usually fills it with fluid. So that's what you're seeing. You see more of the dominant wrinkles in his cerebellum because it's just shrinking, and so the wrinkles are more dominant than on the left side. There's more fluid around the brainstem and in that area, and it's just going away. So they're on point. We got a diagnosis. So we asked, now what? Rustin has been speaking about something, and I think this is why he wanted me to share. When things aren't going to plan. This wasn't what we expected. So Milwaukee's answer to now what was, well, we want you to go out to Philadelphia. There's this girl out there, Dr. Vanderveer, that runs an actual leukodystrophy program, like it's a clinic there. And she's the world's leading researcher, and you got one of the rarest ones on your hands. And she brings in about 85 other doctors from all over the world every year to talk about it, and she's doing incredible things in her research. She's even applying something that she calls gene therapy to some kids with a form, not Maverick's form, but a different form of leukodystrophy, and she's having some incredible success where they're all terminal cases up until this clinical trial where they're suspending the disease and its progression and degeneration. And so now through a stringent therapy program, these kids are gaining. A couple of them lost. There's 18 of them. 2 of them have passed. Then one family in England opted for a bone marrow transplant, and they lost him during the procedure. It's a tough procedure. And the other one, remember, it's progressive. and you just don't know. And so the disease had progressed too fast. It just took him out. And the other thing with leukodystrophies is when the disease is typically more aggressive and progressive when the symptoms present right off the bat. So Maverick's, his geneticist, Dr. Basil, would theorize that Maverick was born with it, conception. So his would be early, because some of these leukodystrophies, the symptoms don't present until maybe the child's 9, 10, 13, whatever it is. So these guys are already walking and talking and right, you know what I mean? So they're starting here as they lose. So the ones that when their disease starts early, you know, they go faster. So we go to Philadelphia, talk with Dr. Vanderveer. He's in the research program, and he's in clinic. And so in clinic, we did not have Dr. Vanderveer on our schedule. Man, I can't think of the neurologist's name now to save my life that we ended up getting. She was wonderful, but Dr. Vanderveer runs the whole program. And she swings in because she had already known that I had finally caved in my stubbornness to try to raise some funds for some insurance is fantastic, but it's a business, right? They're trying to profit. I get it, but they don't cover everything. So there were things that dramatically improves Maverick's life and Jess's life that me and my stubbornness. Additionally, people would just send cards, and there'd be like a check in there, and so it dawned on me. I was like, man, I am not only being an idiot when it comes to helping out Jess and my own son, but here I am, like denying a lot of people that keep calling up saying, hey, what can we do for you? Because we're living in Wisconsin, and so we started that GoFundMe, and then as I started researching and figuring out how close they were to actually maybe breaking this thing wide open, it just took a different feel. The fundraisers, he's going to start working with the Mad Ants, and he might start working with the Pacers if we're lucky. He's been on the news a couple of times, and the whole idea is that we're going to start some type of a foundation, outside of maybe the GoFundMe that we can really make an impact on the research of this disease. So when we go to Philadelphia, as it turns out, Dr. Vanderveer says, when you were diagnosed in August, you're right on the money. It was leukodystrophy, HABC, but let's not call it that anymore because I just recently figured out, and haven't published the article yet, that it's a little more complex. You need that gene, the TUBB4A gene, that we used to call HABC. But these kids' symptoms vary so much inside of the protein variant. And of the 72 kids, we're finding that a lot of them have similar protein variants. So Maverick now becomes about 4 to 7-ish, 4 for sure. There's a California, there's a Canadian one, there's a China. So there's 4 for sure. They think there's probably 7 of 7.5 billion people in the world. And there's his protein variant on the bottom, C.763 GA. So now, we're still going to lose a son. So people say, how do you cope with that? How you doing? As a tough guy, when you get in your car in the morning and then you got to drive over to Sydney, Ohio, you got a couple hours to cry it out. And then you get yourself together and you handle business. Or maybe in Wisconsin, you had, to go talk about building allocations up in Green Bay. There's a 2 hour in the car. You handle it there. Call a couple friends. But how do you cope with it? How do you deal with it? Well, one night, I want to say Jess was at her Monday night Bible study with her special needs mothers at the church we went to, and everybody was in bed. I went back into Maverick's room to get him out of bed. To rock him. Because you genuinely, you really think, I hope I don't go, man, I wish I would have done something different. I've never asked the question why. It's not wrong to ask it. We're human. But I've never asked why. I know why. We all live in a fallen world. My son, we aren't privileged in anything different. We'll play by these rules. So how do you cope with it? So I went back in and I was rocking. I got Maverick out of bed and was rocking him. Now, I'm not crazy, and the genetic test proved that there's nothing wrong with me. It wasn't an audible voice, but I had this sensation to read James 1. It's one chapter. It's 27 verses. Wasn't an audible voice. I'm not, I don't know. It's just, it was James. James. I put Maverick back in bed and I walked downstairs, pulled out my iPad, grabbed the Bible app and I read James. Now, so here's something. So take this away from today. Read the book of James every morning. Maybe read it on your lunch break. Maybe read it before you go home at night. Maybe read it before you go to bed at night. The book of James needs to just continuously be read throughout the day. You're talking about embracing trials, and you're talking about asking God for wisdom, and you're talking about all kinds of things that are encouraging to a Christian and help you throughout the day. I mean, that you just live that book of James. So I read the book of James, and throughout the next week, it continuously, so I read the book of James continuously the whole next, probably 100 times. And I still can't put my finger on it. I've told Russ this. I've told the last people this. I've told Justin. I started reading Genesis 22. I don't know why, but I'm sure there was a reason that I was like, oh that was interesting. You know what? He referenced. I'm gonna look it up. Now I've heard the story of Genesis 22 a million times, but I guess I didn't know it was that story. But he had referenced it, and so I looked it up, and I read it, and so this Genesis 22 has become all these events have genuinely changed me at this point to where, Genesis 22. So let me read something here. So Genesis 22. I'm not going to read the entire chapter in every single verse because there's some that it's just it'll bog you down with names and different things. So 2 through 9 though. So this is the story of Abraham. When he was 99 years old, then God named Abram Abraham and Isaac. Because here we are in a similar situation. So God says, starting 2, read through 9. It says, take now your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the land of Moriah. Offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I will tell you. So Abraham rose early in the morning and saddled his donkey and took 2 of his young men with him and Isaac, his son, and he split wood for the burnt offering. They rose and went to the place which God had told them. On the 3rd day, Abraham raised his eyes and saw the place from a distance. Abraham said to his young men, the servants, stay here with the donkey, and I and the lad will go over there, and we will worship, we'll return to you. Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering, laid it on Isaac his son, and took in his hand a fire, knife, and so the 2 of them walked on together. Isaac spoke to Abraham, his father, and he says, my father. Abraham says, here I am, son. He says, well, listen. Behold, the fire, the wood, but where's the lamb for the burnt offering? Abraham said, God will provide for himself the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. So the 2 of them walked on together. Now, some people argue that Abraham, he knew God would provide, but Abraham didn't think he was going to lose his son. I'm not in that camp. I think Abraham knew he was going to lose his son. If he would be resurrected or what, I don't know what Abraham was thinking, but I think Abraham 100% knew he was going to lose his son, because if he didn't believe it, then God asking him to do what he did doesn't have any meaning. So Abraham and Isaac head on up the mountain. And Isaac says, Dad, where's the lamb? We got everything else. What's going on? Abraham says, hey, relax. God's got this. So they head on up the mountain. For 3 days, Abraham knows his son's going to die. Here we are, knowing Maverick's going to die. So there's something similar that's drawn me to Genesis 22. And so we're answering the question of how do you deal with this? How do you cope with it? Perspective, maybe. Perspectives change based on information, I think. Even moods. But lifestyles don't. And so here's Abraham heading on up the mountain. He's as obedient as they come at this point. Because he's going to go on up with the son he loves, and he's going to kill him. I'm not going to kill Maverick. I'm like the other way. There's anything I could do, but either way, we're both going to lose our son. And Abraham doesn't miss a step. He's heading on up because obedience to God is that's his thing. So I'm thinking about this. Now, God intervenes. So Genesis 22, 10 through 13. Abraham stretched out his hand, took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of the Lord called him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. I tried to make that louder when I've been talking, because that's how it presents right there. See, the angel of the Lord, he was excited in this moment because, again, this request of God only has merit if Abraham's all in. So Abraham stretched out his hand and took the knife to slay his son, and the angel of the Lord had to stop him because he was going to do it. Because he knew his son was going to die. And he was obedient in this request. So continuing on, Abraham said, here I am. He said, so now the angel of the Lord says, do not stretch out your hand against the lad and do nothing to him. For now, that you fear God. For now I know that you fear God, since you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. Then Abraham raised his eyes and looked. Behold, behind him was a ram caught in the thicket by his horns. And Abraham went, took the ram, offered him, the lamb, for a burnt offering in place of his son. Abraham called that name, and so now Abraham names this spot. Did God want Isaac to die? Nope. He wanted Abraham's obedience. He didn't want Isaac to die. You see, I had posted on Facebook when we first learned of his diagnosis that I didn't think God wanted, this wasn't necessarily in God's will. This wasn't in the plan as much as, it's not a, why is this happening? For me, it was so, what are we going to do with this? Remember, because I'm a fixer. And if I can't fix this, well, okay, I'm going to respond somehow. All I need to do is be obedient. It's really that simple. But I'm going to talk into a time slot. So God doesn't want Isaac to die. God doesn't want Maverick to die. God could save him right now. And he'd be the only person ever to win at leukodystrophy. It happens. God does miracles. But it's whatever God wants, right? So if he gets saved, great. I got such a platform that I can talk on. If he doesn't, I still got one. I'm talking about it right now. But it's, what are we going to do with it? Now, there's one more part to this Genesis 22. And so now I'm going to grab 15 through 19. The angel of the Lord called to Abraham a second time from heaven. And he says, by myself, capital M, by myself, I have sworn, declares the Lord, because you have done this thing and have not withheld your son, your only son. Indeed, I will greatly bless you, and I will greatly multiply your seed as the stars of the heavens and as the sand which is on the seashore. And your seed shall possess the gate of their enemies. In your seed, all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice. So Abraham returned to his young men, the servants, and they rose, and they went together. Well, they went home. And then guess what happens? God builds nations out of Abraham. And at 99 years old, in that family, he's got one son, Isaac. Not anymore. He's got descendants. He's got descendants that number the stars, and he builds nations out of this guy. So Abraham, go kill your son. Obedient. Blessing. So here I am, working through a problem, coping with something. You see this applies. So I'm a different person now than when I left Brighton years ago. I'm not the same manners, but I don't think the same way. I've always been a Christian. I'm not better than the next person. It's just I just see things different. So it doesn't take what's going on here to go on out here. It's just obedience, right? And so we walk by so many blessings because we just get wrapped up with what we want to do. Because it's my son, man. I don't want to kill him. How about I'll go grab my prize bull. We just need to be obedient. So there's a time, I was in Wisconsin one day, and I was talking with he wasn't at the time, but he is Now we've had a company realignment. Oh, go to God uses your story. So Rustin said this last Sunday. God uses your story intersecting with his glory. God uses your story intersecting with his story for his glory. So this, like, when we're not obedient, this doesn't happen. You know what I mean? They don't intersect. God's got this design, this plan, and when you're trying to come up with your own, you're on this line and he's on this line. Well, you're not going to intersect. And so Rustin accurately says God uses your story intersecting with his story for his glory. So now I work for Aunt Millie's, and at this time I had told Jess and I had told a couple other people. I said, I think I'm supposed to leave the company. It was a feeling I had, kind of like the James feeling, that there's change coming, and I was supposed to leave Aunt Millie's. So there was a lot of change happening to me in this moment. I didn't know where I was supposed to be. It had even popped up that, maybe it's more in missions. Now, not leaving missions, like that's never been my thing, but like being more involved, just being more involved. And so I was talking with a gentleman in my car one morning in Milwaukee that works for Aunt Millie's as well. He runs the frozen division. He's a vice president as well now with me. So Aunt Millie's mission statement, the top part is the top part. Our mission is big and sell high quality products. A lot of companies like to put fancy things in their mission statement to tell you why they can do something better than the next guy, and that's why you need to go with them. But so the third part of our mission statement, it talks about serving a creator. So we're going to respect everyone. We're going to serve our creator by applying Christian principles in all that we do. That's on every one of our business cards. Family-owned company, and we put that on our business card that I hand to everybody. And our owners genuinely want that to happen. I had told my Genesis 22 story to Todd one day because I knew that Todd was a Christian in our company as well, and he was kind of in that executive area as well. And he says a couple years back, this guy swung by the bakery and was scaring all the secretaries here because he wanted somebody to come down so he could pray with him. Todd was the closest one around, so Todd come down and walked the guy out of the building and walked down to the corner. There's like a little that goofy roundabout downtown Fort Wayne. They got there, and this guy talks about wanting so my James story was kind of like his thing. Hey, I'm supposed to come down here and pray for somebody today, and he goes into this story of Christian principles, blessings in Genesis 22. And now here I just laid something out to Todd at Genesis 22. And Todd's like, dude, I'm like goosebumps here in my car. Let me send you some emails from years back. So I wasn't supposed to leave Aunt Millie's. I was supposed to be more of this for the company. I believe that now. And so we move back to Fort Wayne. Now, there's one more father-son story here. Go ahead. I'm going to put that right there. So I saw that picture on Facebook one day. And that's a tough one right there to look at. But there's one more father-son combination that holds a lot of weight that I'm going to touch on. You see, whether you live to be several hundreds of years old, like Abraham, or you live to be 8, 10, like they think Maverick will, through our obedience is our ability to live those intersecting stories and impact and influence a lot of people. And this picture very accurately portrays, what's coming up. And so the other father-son story. You see, you have God the Father and God the Son. All of this is possible, right? So how do you cope with this? How do you deal with this? It's not perspective, it's a lifestyle, right? I'm going to see him again. You see, even Christ in Luke knew what he was up against. And he says, Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done. You see, the Son of God wanted to be obedient to God the Father, but he didn't want to go through it. You see, God didn't want Isaac to die, and he didn't have to because of Abraham's obedience. God doesn't want Maverick to die, but he might. I don't know that God wanted Jesus to die either. I mean, he started out making paradise right in the garden, but we couldn't get it right. So God sends his son. And so God's Son dies. You see, it's how you cope with it. It's a life that you start to live to serve your Creator and apply Christian principles wherever you go. I have a horrible time. You should prioritize, God first, family second, work third. I have a horrible I don't know where the line is. So, in closing, that's how it's obedience, and it's about being impactful and influencing. You don't have to go around Bible thumping everywhere. But through your obedience, you'll be impactful and influential, and so that's what you do, and I guess that's what Russ and I talked about in the office when I just wanted 5 minutes just to say thanks. Thanks for, hey, you know what? Thanks for loving on my son, because that's pretty humiliating from a parent's standpoint. Humbling. But so that he can have the mic for 5 minutes and think everybody turned into this right here. So, yep.
Amen. Can we thank our brother for sharing? Well, hey, thanks for joining us and watching this video of our sermon this past Sunday. We hope it's been an encouragement to you We believe in the ministry of what's happening at Brighton Chapel, and we believe it's going to make a difference in your life. And so we hope that you'll come back and be a part of it. We hope you'll visit us in person, be a part of what's happening here at Brighton Chapel. We hope you have a great day.